The world today is facing an unprecedented crisis. The havoc created due to the COVID-19 outbreak has affected economies across the globe. To showcase a way forward from this tsunami of disruptions inundating global economies, Accenture presents UnWired Prevay, Reimagining Business Series 2.0, which brought together thought leaders and global change makers to reimagine business as they share insights and outline new age growth imperatives for us in the post-COVID world. The meet commenced with a keynote address by Harsh Mariwala, Chairman Marico, talking about leadership strengths in VUCA times.
I'm very, very happy to be associated with the ET Global Business Summit. So I'll start off by saying that the role of leadership is to add value to all the stakeholders and not just shareholders. This is one of the most stressful times for us. A lot of anxieties, a lot of uncertainties, and differing impact on different businesses. So within the same group, we have two different businesses, one doing well and one not doing well because of the nature of the business. So how do you overcome this anxiety, stress? Because if it is not handled well, it can lead to depression and serious mental health issues. Leaders have to develop a leadership style which is very authentic, which is open, based on trust, has to be fair, transparent. One has to show a lot of empathy in these times, and caring, and finally collaborative. Now, coming to the business challenges, there are two ways of looking at this pandemic. One is the newer opportunities the pandemic is throwing up. The other is the threat which the pandemic is likely to encounter. So one need to look at trends. How do you nullify the threats and how do you encash on the opportunities? And in many cases, pandemic is just speeding up a trend that was already underway, but it is just accelerating that. The whole habit of e-habit, whether it's e-learning for children, e-commerce buying for housewives, e-consultations for going to doctors and getting medicines through prescription, virtual meetings as we are doing now, work from home, digital marketing is a new habit which all of us are learning. And the fact that we have been doing it for a few months, it means that we have mastered that habit. So it will actually become a trend. So I strongly believe that there will be lots of opportunities in e-learning, e-commerce, e-consultation, in holding virtual meetings, and in digital marketing. So digital is the way forward, and organizations have to find out ways to improve their digital capabilities or analytics or artificial intelligence and so on. So organizations will need to rework the business model. How do you drive agility is a key challenge. I think organizations need to have a purpose. In terms of giving something back to the society, I am a strong believer in active giving, which is just not giving a donation, but actively be involved in giving something back to the society. And we had started a COVID challenge for meeting the shortage of PPE equipment and ventilators. And we got something like 600 entries, and we just finalized the winners. These are all innovative players who have innovated scalable entries and also affordable. And I think we will start seeing the impact of what work they've done in meeting these challenges. So to end, I would say when the going gets tough, the tough get going. Never waste a crisis. I have seen in Marico itself that this crisis has shown stellar performance in terms of our supply chain issues. It has led to extraordinary behavior. Our engagement levels, and we do it every week amongst all our employees. I think ultimately, I would say, I think all of us have to be grateful for where we are. This too will pass. It will be a different world. So be ready and be ready to succeed in this new world. Look at the positive side, nullify the threats, and cash on the opportunities. So with that, all the best to all of you. Thank you.
Up next, Biocon Executive Chairperson Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw shared her insights on how the United Nations SDGs must illuminate the path for humanity post-COVID.
An existential threat to humanity, which has forced us to pause and reflect at our lives, our economic priorities, the meaning of progress, and the importance of sustainability. The pandemic has revealed that mankind has been on a path of unsustainable consumption, growth, ecological degradation, and inequality, which is simply not sustainable. In an increasingly interconnected world, the coronavirus crisis has taught us that what affects one person anywhere affects everyone everywhere. In this context, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals assume critical importance. In the times of COVID, we realize the SDGs, with their universal scope, interlinked nature, and focus on leaving no one behind, provide an essential roadmap to a sustainable and equitable future. I would really like to imagine a post-COVID world that tackles poverty to begin with. The World Bank predicts that COVID-19 could force 50 million people into extreme poverty. Therefore, poverty alleviation programs has to become an imperative the world over. Then comes hunger. If we let human beings die of starvation, there can be nothing more shameful. Therefore, there is a need to end hunger, achieve food security, and improve nutrition to promote sustainable agriculture. Health is, of course, a very important part of this SDG, of the SDGs. As country after country struggles to address the growing number of patients, it is clear that public health facilities and apparatus need overhaul and a complete fresh perspective. Governments will have to invest heavily in public health care. Democratizing education is also another very important SDG of ensuring inclusive and equitable quality education has got a push with the shutdowns of schools and colleges in terms of online education. And as you can see in the post-COVID world, these new models of education are going to be a huge economic opportunity. Another important aspect is reducing inequality. While the virus infects people regardless of wealth, the poor will be most affected due to long-standing segregation by income and race, reduced economic mobility, and the high cost of medical care. Finally, let's come to climate. Decreased economic activity due to lockdowns in most parts of the world have had far-reaching effects in a span of just 2 months. Therefore, we also have to be very careful post-lockdown in terms of how we deal with industrial pollution, vehicular pollution, and the like, because I think we have a huge opportunity to clean up our environment. So in conclusion, I'd like to say that mankind has for all these years been chasing greed, chasing money, chasing political power, chasing affluence, as if there was no tomorrow. The advent of COVID has reminded us that we have been chasing after all the wrong things. At a time when humanity is facing one of the biggest threats to its existence, success should not be about making billions of dollars, but about saving billions of lives. We need to realize humankind will have to come together in this fight for survival. We need to realize that survival is about partnerships and collaborations and about collective action. Thank you.
What followed was a panel on prescriptions for unlocking the Indian economy.
Unlocking prescriptions for unlocking the Indian economy. This is something that has been on top of everybody's mind. The government has announced a fiscal stimulus package worth around 20 lakh crore. If we can find out as to what is it that you think needs to be done immediately to get the Indian economy going. How do you get consumption back? And how especially do you get urban consumption back when most of your cities are in a lockdown? Mr. Sodhi, over to you, sir.
Consumption or demand has not been much impacted as food is concerned. And there has been some shift taken place. I mean, consumption is shifting more towards from the unbranded or loose to the branded side, but affordable and with a good quality and of hygienic side. And then when demand is created, naturally industry will run. So now we don't want investments in the industry, we want demand to be generated. Income has been reduced not only in urban but also rural. If you have to generate income demand in rural India, so you have to see that how our industry can run faster, and for the demand generation is the main thing. For that, you have to give money into or cash into the hands of rural and urban both, and that can be only possible by giving more through PM Kisan Yojana or reducing income tax or giving some subsidies to the urban consumer.
Mr. Puri, if I can just come across to you, how do you see the demand picture now? And what do you think should be done to actually unlock demand and drive demand?
It's clear that the large metros and the larger cities are the ones where you have a severe issue. There was, even before this happened, an issue of aggregate demand in the Indian economy. That hasn't gone away. Unfortunately, this pandemic has taken a hammer and hit hard, and therefore it has got exacerbated. So to my mind, the solutions have to be, how do you create aggregate demand? In the short run, the only way of creating aggregate demand is putting money in the hands of the consumer. As near normalcy comes, we will have to be innovative and we will have to put money in the hands of the consumer.
But Mr. Vora, if I can come to you, sir, demand for your products, pharmaceutical products, really shouldn't have been much of an issue in the last couple of months or so. But what have been the challenges that you and your firm have gone through in the last, say, 2.5 months? And how have you come through this?
In pharma, we've seen it was really tough the first 1 month because, unlike other industries, we really didn't need to. We had to manage our own way to get people working at the factories, and our employees and employees of every other pharma company have actually stepped up to the occasion. And I feel good about the fact that this industry could rally with government support to make sure that no medicine was out of stock. So I think it was tough, but we managed it really well. But we see stress in some aspects, which I think needs correction.
But Mr. Singh, if I can come to you, technology is obviously going to play a very key role going forward. What, according to you, would the technology investments that need to be made, organizations will need to make these technology investments and build more resilience in their business, and at the same time generate employment?
If there's one thing that has happened in the last 2 months is that the pivot towards digital consumption and digital interaction has increased at the pace that would have normally gone in 5 to 7 years, right?
Right.
So there will have to be investments made by organizations to make sure that they are now ready to interact with their consumer base, in the digital format, right? On one hand, on the other hand, sadly the instability, if I can call it, or the lack of clarity about stop starts in the economy is here. So in more than resilience, it is the elasticity in your cost base which will have to become quite critical, which will again mean that you'll have to invest quite heavily, using technology to increase the elasticity on your cost base. So I would say 2 different sets of investments: one on on the consumer side to enable digital consumption and digital interaction, and the other on the enterprise side to increase elasticity of cost base.
Rasesh, if I can come to you, do you think that the government will do demand stimulus in terms of putting cash back in the hands of consumers? What is your reading?
I think so. I think when I talk to government and even RBI and all, they are holding a lot because currently they feel there is such a crisis that you all your ammunition in one shot because. So I think tax relief and GST relief, especially for the corporates, I think corporates are okay. What corporates needs is more reforms and policy certainty and ease of doing business. What consumers need is confidence. They need cash because cash gives you confidence for sure. But they need to feel confident about the future. Then you will go and buy or a house or start spending again. And we need to revive that. So I think I agree with you. I think the GST cuts and some tax. The government ultimately is going to lose money if at all economy doesn't come back. So there is an invisible cost and there is a visible cost. I think the world is saying I might as well take the visible cost of putting in the hands of people indirectly, directly, and get the economy going. Because if the economy gets going, government will get tax revenues and GST revenues and all. So we and the government is aligned that the companies to start making profits, the individuals need to have incomes and all that. So government needs to kickstart, and they are actually the risk taker or the kickstarter agency of the last resort in that sense.
Thank you for spending this time with us and the ET Global Business Summit on Reimagining Indian Business, Prescriptions for Unlocking the Economy.
Welcome back. Moving on to the next session, where Sir Martin Sorrell, founder and executive chairman, S4 Capital, and founder of Wire and Plastic Products, WPP, spoke on how COVID-19 accelerates digital transformation.
Things have eased a little bit across geographies. Even in India, we've seen a little bit of relaxation. How are you now sensing consumer sentiment and, more importantly, industry sentiment?
Digital disruption or digital transformation is accelerating as a result of COVID-19. The lockdowns are easing, but certainly the battle against the virus is not over. But I think generally, from a digital point of view, there are three major effects. The first is at a consumer level. As you well know, and we're doing it now, we communicate more online. We're using technologies that are perfectly efficient. Number two is online shopping. India is in the midst of an online shopping revolution, a digital shopping revolution. So we're communicating online, we're shopping online, and the last thing, very importantly, we're educating our kids online, or trying to. Technology is not as good as it should be, but it will develop further. Curricula are not as good as they should be, but will develop further. So that's the consumer. At a media level, digital is sweeping all before it. Free-to-air TV and the switch to digital is becoming more important from a media point of view. And lastly, and most importantly, probably, the people who run enterprises, who run companies, who before COVID-19 were hesitant to go ahead with digital disruption on transformation because it caused enormous change in their organizations. So not only, I think that's encapsulates it. It's digital acceleration. It's not anything, well, there are some new stuff happening of working from home, city centers becoming less attractive from an office point of view, from a residential point of view, disbursement of people, travel being less, and we can develop that further. But I think at its core, what you're seeing is an acceleration of change.
When you look at economies such as ours, how does that transformation go through really when you talk about digital transformation?
Well, I worry about India in that context. I think an unfortunate consequence of COVID-19 is the potential threat to the inequality between countries as well as within countries. So there has to be a lot of significant investment, education, retraining, hardware, software. And I think the Facebook investment in Jio is really symptomatic or emblematic.
Thank you so much again for your time. Thank you again
for
your plain speak.
The meet concluded with a panel of experts discussing the role of AI in post-COVID recovery.
Welcome to this session on role of AI in post-COVID recovery. Given how businesses are reeling under the coronavirus pandemic-induced slowdown, I mean, how do you think, in terms of AI adoption will help at this point of time? Dipali.
With COVID, the whole digitization and the AI has in fact come in more faster than we would have imagined. It's so much of data that will be there that, AI will have to really have a big role to play. It has been a great learning for all of us CEOs here. First of all, like looking at how to deal with it. How can we repurpose our businesses? How can we save our people? I think with our factories are working now completely with social distancing norms to the COVID protocols. There's a fear, how are you going to save our people there? So I think that's very, very important. Disruption has been the key. Disruption actually, Vinod, for us, even to the extent of meeting our customers virtually, running the factory floors virtually. I mean, all our meetings on the shop floor of our factories are being done virtually. Our audits are being virtually done. Our inspections are being done virtually. So the idea is, Vinod, I think it's important to see that it's a new era. It's a new era, and I think people like us will have to imbibe it and embrace it with open arms. Otherwise, the world is just going to leave us behind.
Ali, if you were to talk about how it's affecting how AI can bring in changes in services.
The interesting part of our business is we've got two aspects of our business, right? One is our traditional kind of movies business, where we used to kind of distribute films on theatrical audiences around the country and around the world. The second aspect of the business which I represent is the digital business, and there we connect with the customers on a daily basis, right? And I strongly believe that a lot of the innovation, especially within the digital businesses, actually starts from media and entertainment, because that's the highest point of engagement that the customer has today. Pretty much each and every one of you on the panel and in the audience today would be probably watching 2-3 hours, potentially in lockdown, which has been a good time for us, even longer sessions for movies or online video and series, right? So what we've been doing is working on several kind of AI models already, because we're collecting consumer data of viewership on a daily basis. We understand behavior patterns. Some of the interesting things we can talk about during the session is how are we doing things differently to make the AI smarter. So I believe that it's important for every business today to adopt that level of understanding the fabric of the customer, creating what we call as customer cohorts, and ensuring that you create this kind of machine learning to be able to deliver a better service, maybe a lot more efficient, and ensure that you're able to drive customer love over a period of time.
Which are the sectors where it will impact the most, and which are the functions where impact will be felt most? We can give Aninde in.
So, in terms of the industries where you will see increasing jobs, because there's always this fear that AI is going to take away jobs, I don't necessarily see it that way. I think AI is going to create at least as many jobs as it displaces, because of this, data engineering powered economy, right? So you're looking at a structure where you need people who can do data engineering, algorithm development, experimentation, and software, right? Each of these 4 components are critical to an AI-based organization. And as COVID is sort of expediting this digital transformation, you will see increasing demand for people with these skill sets. And we see that in the higher education system, where jobs are shifting away from, let's say, traditional finance into tech, right? And I think this is the way I would look at it, this structure.
How should a company go about building, building blocks in terms of, building a model which is driven by AI, which has data included, which is the next generation technology involved? Yes, sir.
I just have a simple 3S policy towards in terms of setting up the AI building blocks: strategy, skills, structure, right? And the first is simply about having a very concerted AI strategy, which is focusing on value. What is the business impact of the value that AI can essentially generate and unlock trapped value in an organization? That needs to be very clearly articulated. The second part is about skills, which I think Anindya very beautifully articulated, right? Both in terms of the skills required, the technology which is required to enable this. The third is around structure. The structure has to be linked well to strategy. It has to create a center of excellence that empowers decision making, has the right set of people leading it, and clearly is in the C-suite. So the structure is equally important to the strategy and the skills in terms of how AI is built within an organization, how it is incubated, and in terms of the leeway given for decision making. Now, all these 3 S's, either companies can build it, they can buy off the shelf, or they can partner. But I think one key thing, and the 4th S, which therefore is important, is scaling. Now, most companies nowadays probably make the mistake of saying, let me look at one particular use case, one particular function, and then see what I can do with it and move forward. But that creates a bit of too much of a stress in the system. A scale is important for AI. It then feeds off each other in terms of multi-functions, different people looking at a business goal rather than just looking in their own domain. So go big, go look at transformation of the entire business and do it at scale.
AI is clearly no silver bullet in this crisis, but it will be a very important part in terms of, if you want to win in the future. And winners, I think, will put software, data, and AI at the core of their operational model. Session. Thank you so much, panelists. Thank you so much.
Every organization will have to assess that what is the health they are in and how will they emerge out of this situation. Bucket A, that you possibly will emerge out of this situation relatively strong, or you have clear actions that you can take that will help you emerge out of this strong. The second is that you will emerge out of this into a little bit suspect, unclear yet that whether actions can give you a strong financial footing. A third is that you emerge with a threat to your existence. If you emerge in the first category, then you must continue with a spade of investment. Those investments will have to come in terms of reorienting your go-to-market business models, heavy investments in data and digital, and reorienting your supply chain constructs. Now, if you're in the second bucket, then it is all about cutting waste. So you must invest to identify the areas of wastage and cut those out. And of course, if you are in the third category, that is the category where you hunker down, sit back, wait to identify whether your business model will be acceptable in the times to come, and reassess as times change whether you can survive.